Hello everybody, welcome to vspinformation. Presently, India has been caught in the dreadful web of corona pestilence. Epidemic Disease Act, India's 123 years old law to help and fight the pandemic. On January 19, 1897, about 4 months after the bubonic plague was identified in Mumbai, Queen Victoria has directed her government to take the most stringent measures to eradicate the pestilence. And now, due to the intensification of coronavirus, the Indian government has invoked this Epidemic Disease Act of 1897 to eradicate coronavirus. The Indian government has implemented Section 2 of 1897 Act presently. Then what is this Section 2 of 1897 Act? Recently, the government is going on giving some instructions to the people in regards to corona control. After the meeting of group of ministers, the central government has decided to invoke this Section 2 of 1897 Epidemic Disease Act of British period. Then why this situation has come to invoke this act? What is the reason for that? So many custodians are being in implementation in regards to corona control by the union government due to the increase of corona cases daily. The recent custodies of Indian government, like the people who will come from the foreign countries, has to be in quarantine, should be in isolation ward for 14 days. The people, whoever may be, must follow this custody. The people who are coming from China, Italy, France, Japan, Spain, Germany, South Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, etc. should definitely go into quarantine facility. The union government has prohibited the entry of foreigners and foreign travelers into India unless they have a special permission. That means Indians can come, but the foreigners, including the overseas citizens of India, are prohibited. The people of Indian progeny who are living in foreign countries do not have the dual citizenship in India. That is why overseas Indian cards will be given to the people who belongs to the Indian progeny if they are being as the citizens of foreign countries. So in regards to these people also, these custodies will be in execution. Not only union government, but state governments also sometimes will give some instructions to the people, like closing the theaters, closing the schools, closing the markets, etc. In Italy, even on marriage events also, prohibitions were imposed. In this way, if the people are being diverted to quarantine, isolation wards, some people may approach the courts. They may complain that their freedom is being plundered, their freedom of movement is being exploited. They may argue that they are being forcibly kept in the quarantine, isolation wards without their permission. Also, they may complain that their right to privacy is being killed. In this way, there are many chances for the people to approach the courts. Right to business is a fundamental right. Every citizen has the right to do their own business, whatever they like. So, a theatre owner can approach the court by complaining that he has the right to do business, but the state government has ordered to close his theatre. He also says that it is his fundamental right. Right to do business is a fundamental right. But now the state government had ordered to close the business. And also he asked that will the government give any compensation if he closes his business. In this way, the citizens have the right to approach the courts if the government prohibits their business. So in normal situations, if they approach the courts, that will become valid document because it is a fundamental right. Freedom to free movement is a fundamental right. But in the present situations, the people who are having the symptoms of coronavirus are being forcibly kept in quarantine, isolation wards. So, if the government behaves like this towards the people, they may approach the courts by saying that their right to privacy, right to freedom of movement, etc. being get affected, and also can demand compensation from the government. That is why, to overcome all these situations, this 1897 Epidemic Disease Act is brought into execution. This is a small act. In section 1 there are some definitions. In section 2, this section 2 tells us that if this type of epidemic disease, contagious disease spreads, in order to control the disease, the central and the state governments will instruct some advices to the citizens. These advices are known as legally enforceable advisories. That means these are only advices like close the theater, close the school. Like this, the government will advise the citizens. The government will advise the people, those who are affected by the corona positive symptoms, to be in isolation wards for 14 days. But if the citizens reject the advices and approach the courts, then the government can't do anything. Government can't take any action also. According to Epidemic Disease Act 1897, the government's advices will changes into legally enforceable advisories. As per section 2 of 1897 Epidemic Disease Act, the union governments and the state governments will get supreme powers to execute the advisories legally. At the beginning of this act, so many people criticized this act, and also so many people said that it was a very brutal act. That's why in normal situations these types of acts will not be implemented. But now a peculiar and special situation is there. WHO has declared that this corona as an epidemic pestilence. Central and state governments have decided to invoke this Epidemic Disease Act of 1897. As per this, section 3 of this act, if anyone deviates this, the government can impose penalty, and also that the government can send them to jail for 6 months. So to eradicate this epidemic coronavirus, both central and state governments are gaining authority and potency by themselves.